Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Hope you're having a great day. It's starting to rain and drizzle here in southern Kentucky, but we're going to get over it and get through it and make the best of it because sometimes it's going to rain. And the Bible does say it rains on the just and the unjust. I want to kind of make something very clear in my approach today because I'm not always going to approach things the way that people will think I'm going to approach things. And I enjoy dealing with conflicting issues and difficulties and frustrations. And I minored in philosophy, abnormal psychology, and Greek and church history in college. And I like just talking, debating, involved. I like being involved and looking at different sides of things. But I'm going to start with a verse in Psalm 56 and verse 3. David said this. He said, "When I'm afraid, I will put my trust in thee. In God, whose words I praise, in God I have put my trust. I shall not be afraid. What can mere man do to me?" David had fled from Saul. He knew about sleeping in caves. He also had the opportunity to basically take Saul's head off and didn't do it. But I guarantee there have been times when you folks have gotten that notice from a bill collector or a bill company because you're late on something. And that sudden fear of not knowing what you're going to do or this or that. Or maybe you've heard when the doctor said, "Hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but here's what we think this is." And you deal with those. And because difficult things happen to us all the time. And that's not the setup really for today. But I want to talk about fear. Halloween came about from the Celts. And you can study history and confirm what I'm saying. They wanted to dress up and they wanted basically to scare the scary things away. So they decided they would dress up in outfits and they would try to scare the scary things. Now, first of all, the things that you can't see are probably scarier than you can imagine. Sometimes you get a glimpse into the spiritual world, the supernatural world, and it can be beautiful, but it can also be terrifying in that sense. Now, I'm not for sure how they determined if their costumes or masks were scary enough to scare the unseen, spiritual, scary things that were out there, but that's kind of where it came from. You go right now to the idea of this. There'll be has already been a whole lot of money spent on candy, costumes, decorations. In just the last 10, 15 years, it's hard to go by a road or a yard or somebody's house that has kids during the Halloween time frame or October and not see inflatables. I grew up with a hard plastic outdoor decorations you had to run electric cords to, and and parents were always like, "Go put this here and go put that there," and you're like, "I don't want to do this," but nonetheless, a whole lot of money is going to be spent, already has been spent on Halloween. When I look at Halloween, I've got one major thing that I see about it that really concerns me the most, and that is the scare factor. Everything about Halloween in our day and age focuses around horror, blood, gore, themes that are designed to scare people, frighten people, and cause fear. The Bible says God's not given us a spirit of fear. It's what Paul told Timothy, a young pastor. So it's not about what we've seen or what we don't see, but think about this. I saw some pictures from a place where you can take your children or your teenagers or whatever, and it's like at Halloween. You got pumpkins and autumn type background, and then while these kids are getting their pictures taken, some guy dressed up like Freddy Krueger shows up on the side, and this photographer will photograph your kids panicking, screaming, crying, in fear, running from Freddy Krueger. And then they have the nice, "Hey, the guy's not going to hurt you. It's just a joke. Sit down, picture with Freddy Krueger." Halloween has probably scarred a lot of kids. Halloween has scared and scarred a lot of children, a lot of people. I've seen people terrified of things that are, people who are dressed up like something that come to the door. So I don't support dressing up by any means. And I'm going to cover several things, so please understand something. The Bible says when we're afraid, we put our trust in him. But if and when we start letting things happen where we are purposely, intentionally trying to scare our children. That does not fit into the aspect of biblical discipline. In Colossians chapter 3, verses 1 through 4, just listen to this. If then you've been raised up with Christ, if you've been changed, if you have been saved, if you have been redeemed by the blood of the Lamb, keep seeking the things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on earth. For if you have died in your life is hidden with Christ in God. When Christ, who is our life, is revealed, then you also will be revealed with him in glory. Couple things. If you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking that. In other words, don't compromise your position. Don't compromise your faith. This morning I got a very, very long email from somebody because I said one of the best things about Halloween is the candy goes on sale. Well, I'm a type 1 diabetic, so I don't eat a whole lot of candy. But I can tell you this: beside my bedroom, beside our bed in our bedroom on the dresser, I keep a roll of Spree. Now, if you know what Spree are, Spree is hard candy. Okay. Why do I keep it there? Because I can tell you that 4 Spree will increase my glucose by about 80 units. Okay, or my glucose level in my body. And so I also every once in a while will buy a little package of what they used to call them when I was a kid was pixie sticks. Okay, it's just like sugar. I also keep sugar packets by my bed so that if I drop in the middle of the night, I've got something I can get to. I don't eat a lot of candy. My wife, my kids will tell you they don't see me consume candy hardly at all. At all. I do like dark chocolate. I'm not a milk chocolate guy. I like dark chocolate. And from time to time, I'll eat one of those. But I don't eat a whole bar at once. So a lot of situations that are coming up when it comes to Halloween are about the fear factor, the scare factor, and even someone, but I got this email saying, you shouldn't even talk about that. Paul said, do all things in moderation. So everybody's convictions, you need to stay, a lot of times we try to force our convictions on other people. I'm just telling you, I don't support dressing kids up because a lot of times you're going to see costumes that really you shouldn't be dressing your kids in to begin with. When I see 4-year-old kids with a Chucky mask on, I think, man, you know what you're doing to that kid. So people have got to understand that the Halloween holiday is just like any other holiday. How many of you have ever gone into excess at Christmas? Anybody here ever gone crazy with the chocolate rabbits or chocolate bunnies at Christmas, at Easter time? Yeah. Anybody ever overate, 30 hot dogs at a July 4th cookout? I mean, we can make these things what we want them to be. But if Paul said do all things in moderation, that means what we eat. I talked about this about a month ago. I know people who drink way too much Mountain Dew, way too much caffeinated drink. I know people who drink way too much coffee. Okay. I know people who imbibe in things they shouldn't imbibe in, and there's a healthy balance. You have to find those things. Okay. As a type 1 diabetic, I've got to be mindful that what I eat eventually shows up in my glucose levels, and that will impact my eyes, my sight, my vision, a whole lot of things with my body, how I feel, how I live, and my body's a temple. So when it comes to any holiday, we have to apply chapter 3 of Colossians to it. If then you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above. I was in Walmart there. I go to different Walmarts every week so I can get different things, or different stores carry different things. So anyway, I was in a store, and I was coming up from where the toiletry things were, shaving cream and soap and shampoo, which I don't use a whole lot of, as you would probably imagine. But nonetheless, to get from there to the food section, I had to walk by the toy aisles. And I kid you not, there was a lady, and there were probably grandparents. I'm going to imagine that 70s, and the husband had a cart, and I assume it was his wife had a cart. And they had a list, and they were going through, and they were putting toys from the shelves into the buggies, the baskets. And I heard the conversation was basically this: these toys won't be here in 2 months. We got to get all this stuff now. And the husband said, well, are you sure that they're going to want that toy? It doesn't matter if they want it or not. We're going to have it. And it was like, this was the greediest approach to Christmas. I don't care if there's going to be toy aisles empty. The approach was, we got to get this. We got to have this. And in other words, what I saw was Christmas, the attitude towards Christmas was incredibly wrong. When my kids were little, we had a rule. And for Christmas, they got three gifts, three decent sized gifts. They got a stocking and stuff, but they got three gifts. And we based that on the gifts of the wise men, which wasn't around Christmas anyway, but nonetheless, we didn't want them to be so caught up with, hey, I got 37 gifts, for Christmas and that sort of thing. But even the way we approach Halloween, I know there are churches that are doing trunk or treats. I know there are churches doing alternative services. And I ask you something, because I have people who say, these churches are wrong. Are we not supposed to redeem the day? Now, I'm not defending or supporting or saying don't do those things. As a children's pastor, I did a lot of kids festivals around Halloween, but I'll tell you what, we stopped doing the dress up part because inevitably some kid would show up in some demonic witch or skull mask or things like that. So we just started doing games and fun, did a Bible story, had an object lesson, had an altar call. And you know what? I never felt bad. I never felt bad at all. I never felt bad about doing those things to redeem the time, to redeem the days. Now, when we say celebrate, that it depends. Everybody celebrates differently. Everybody celebrates those holidays differently. I do not celebrate Halloween. Our church does not celebrate Halloween. But I'm not going to be upset with churches that try to redeem the time. Now, if you're letting kids dress up like demons and everything else, I question that. I question parents who will take their little kids, and I'm talking 10 and under, and let them dress up like witches, or even worse than the demonic stuff. When they let them dress up like rock stars and things like that. And it's that, and you begin to sensualize kids and costumes and outfits. And let's just face the fact, toys and costumes at Halloween have become a lot more sensual in that, in those situations. So, but at the same time, you got to say, okay, Lord, what can my church do to make a difference around the Christmas time frame? What can my church do to make a difference around the Thanksgiving time frame? What can my church do to make a difference around the Halloween time frame? And if God says do nothing, then you do nothing, and that's okay. Okay. However, even at Easter, we never did the Easter Bunny. We never did Santa Claus. Matter of fact, my son in kindergarten got criticized. I had to talk to a kindergarten teacher because he was saying, guys, look, my friends, Santa Claus is just this is just a myth. He's not real. The reason for Christmas is the birth of Jesus and all these things. And so I get a call from the office, and hey, Mike has been telling kids this and that. Well, it was a Christian school, but still at the same time, you had kids who were not from Christian homes there. But nonetheless, we've got to make sure that anything we do honors and glorifies Christ. And that's where the principle right there in Colossians chapter 3 is. If then you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above where Christ is seated at the right hand of God. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on the earth. And that means maybe talking to people. When they say, hey, man, we notice you don't have all that stuff in your yard. Why not? Well, I don't want to celebrate something that celebrates evil. I don't want to celebrate something that tries to cause fear. And the Bible says, do not fear many, many times. The word fear appears about a little over 500 times in the word. Do not fear, do not fear. Matter of fact, when they went into the promised land, when God was speaking through Moses to Joshua about before they went into the promised land, he said, do not fear, do not be dismayed. He goes before you. So we need to recognize, and even the way we approach it, even the way we talk about it, we have to in a way that honors the Lord. You can't tear into people. And look, if you've got neighbors that dress their kids like all out evil, when's the last time you prayed for the parents next door who dress their kids up in all out evil? When's the last time you prayed for your pastors and your churches to know how to respond to these things in culture? We've got to deal with this. It's a part of culture, so we have to respond. We have to respond the right way. But nonetheless, if then you've been raised up with Christ, that means there are some things we can no longer do, some attitudes we can no longer have. The way that we used to treat people, we don't treat them like that anymore. So don't criticize the churches that are trying to do something to redeem the time. Pray that they do it better. Pray that they make a difference. Because I know when I was doing things as a pastor, I tried to do things to keep kids out of those places, off of those areas, and doing something. And how many times have you told your church or your family about Reformation Day? Let's really talk about one of the reasons for October 31st being a fantastic day, Reformation Day. Martin Luther did something on that day that changed the world. A whole new movement. The Protestant church began because of what Martin Luther did. And so we have to watch what we do and what we say and how we say it. The Halloween theme is the key. Even had an email from someone, that person may be watching. They said that they were doing an adult Halloween themed lunch at their business, their job, and he was going to have to, he didn't want to celebrate it. Should I not go? Should I go? Jesus hung out with drunkards. They called him a drunkard and a wine bibber. Why? Because he hung out with those people. If you found the sinners, that's where you'd find Jesus. And so the whole idea in the church that we hide ourselves from those people and those influences. You can't do that, folks. It doesn't work. It doesn't happen that way. We're in the world, but not of the world. In the world, but not of the world. And that even means you got to be careful what movies you watch. Back when I was a children's pastor, and I'll share this because it's important. A couple was divorced, and so the little boy that had like a 7-year-old boy, and he was with his dad on weekends, and sometimes he was at church and sometimes he wasn't. And basically she got the boy back, and this kid was like, "I need to sleep in your bed, Mom. I'm tired." She's like, "You're too old to sleep in my bed. Just no, Mom. I need to sleep in your bed." And he never would tell her what was wrong. But this kid like slept in her bed for like 3 months, scared to death, and always wanted to make sure he wouldn't go in his bed without Mom being there. And so she finally started talking to the kid, and she brought him to me, and she said, "Will you pray for my son?" And I began to pray for him, and God gave me a word of knowledge that he had seen something that was not fit for children at all. And I just told his mom, I said, "I don't know what, does your husband have movies and things like that, And she said, "Well, yeah. And so basically it came down to this. That dad had allowed his son to watch, are you ready for this? 7 years old, to watch parts of The Exorcist, like the spinning head part. And so when that came out and the father said that, I asked that Lester, bring your son to the church. And we went to our sanctuary, and we anointed him with oil. And I had some other folks come, and we prayed over that little boy. We prayed over that little boy. And we prayed that God would close the doors that were opened into the spiritual, the supernatural. There was obviously fear. We came against fear. I had people fast for that kid for 30 days. We broke it up over 30 days. Somebody fasted 1 full day for that child for 30 days. And it still took about 6 months for the fullness of what we did to take care of that situation. And you see, that was when I really learned that what people allow them, what you put into your eye gate, you cannot forget, you cannot unsee. And that's why in our spiritualized world, in our supernaturally focused world, and why Halloween, and that's why you have haunted houses all over the place. And even you think of the names, like there's one called the Asylum close to us, things of that nature. And even the name is supposed to invoke fear. And yet we're not supposed to give into that spirit of fear. And I do know believers who watch things that they shouldn't have watched, and then that opens the door into the supernatural. It opens the door into some dark areas that are going to impact your life if you're not careful. So we need to celebrate the right things and the good things. And once again, chapter 3 of Colossians should be our position on anything we watch, any place we go, anything we do, anything we speak. If then you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above where Christ is, seated at the right hand of God. In other words, our focus needs to be on heaven. Our focus needs on doing the right things. Set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on the earth. I can't wait to get to heaven for a lot of different reasons. Number one is that physical change in the body. I'll never be tired or weary. I'll never have to deal with another syringe going into my gut for the rest of my life. And so we need to understand, someone just mentioned PTSD. Absolutely. And that little 7-year-old boy was traumatized because he saw things he should never have seen. I had a pastor I went to I went to his church when I was in college. He said it's always easier to hang up pictures in your head than it is to take them down. And the context of that was mostly looking at less than pornographic images for men. But the same thing applies to fearful things, horror movies, anything that's evil or demonic. We've got to monitor what we allow into our head. We've got to monitor what we allow into our minds. We've got to monitor what we see. We see. What we see. We're responsible for what we do with it. And so we need to understand that the Word of God encourages us to keep our eyes focused on the things from Him, the things that are of God. If you've been raised up, keep seeking those things. That is our position. And as believers, we do not have any reason to be looking at things that will cause absolute fear. We have no reason to be pushing our kids to dress like anything demonic. And so if you're a parent and you're still very involved in Halloween, pray about, okay, if you're not going to, and understand this. Once again, I don't celebrate Halloween. I'm not endorsing Halloween. I'm not supporting Halloween, okay, by any means. But once again, we have to have the right approach. We have to be Christ-like and godly in our approach. We have to keep seeking the Lord. So once again, you need to pray for the parents who are dressing their kids up in ways that are going to impact those kids spiritually and supernaturally later on in their life. I can't tell you the number of times when I was doing the harvest parties for the kids that some parent would say, you know what, I don't know why you're going to make my kid. And we always told them, if you bring your kid dressed up like this, we got costumes for them, Bible character costumes, other things like that, hero costumes, whatever. And we would actually make the kid change out. And I had parents, I ain't leaving my kid here. Fine, that's fine, okay. And once again, we don't do those things anymore. And it's not because I thought I was tearing up the neighborhood or hurting people. I wanted to redeem the time. I want to take as I can what culture is doing and respond to it. Matter of fact, let me just read an article that I just saw in the news, and it's worth your time. This is from Fox News. Florida school board member takes elementary school students on field trip to gay bar. So on Fox News, Florida school board member takes elementary school students on field trip to gay bar. And we're upset about Halloween. You may have seen what happened in Hazard, Kentucky, not too far from here. Man, they had kids dressed up almost like strippers, so to speak, in lingerie, guys doing lap dances and stuff like that at the school. And I'm just telling you, and we're worried about Halloween. Those things are happening in our schools. So that tells you where we are culturally. That tells you how far we have fallen from the perch, how far we have fallen from being the watchman that we need to be, how far we have fallen from being the church we need to be, folks. So we need to pray for our school systems and the teachers and the principals and the superintendents and the ones that have to deal with all these situations. We need to pray for our young people who have no direction out there today. There is no direction out there. So we have got to maintain this attitude. If you've been raised with Christ, if you've been redeemed, if you've been restored, if you've been saved, we cannot participate in some of the things the world participates in. Okay? We can't do it. We have to change our thoughts, our attitudes, our actions, our minds, our characteristics, our behaviors, everything we have to change about those things. But we still reach out to those people. We still do what we can. And if your church is there, we've got a what we're calling a dwell service this coming Sunday night. And you know what we're going to be doing? We're going to be praying. We're going to be asking the Lord to move and to manifest and do some things in our community. Why? Because it's Halloween and the focus is on witches and warlocks and wizards and demons and Satan and devils and pitchforks and all that garbage. Okay? So we're going to be praying for our community. We're going to be praying for those things. And someone just said there's no morals. That's right. But who's supposed to be the moral voice? We are. The church, the body of Christ. And so, set apart and sanctified. I really encourage you, do a Bible study on sanctification. Do a Bible study on sanctification, and you'll find that there's a whole lot of things that we still need to change and shift in our lives. You see, this is not about changing an opinion. This is about becoming more Christ-like. Everything we do, everything we do, everything we do has to glorify him. Everything how we raise our kids has to glorify him. How we handle ourselves in the community. You know, I know there were some older ladies back in Indiana could not stand Halloween. And what they would do is they would get field chick tracts, the comic book type tracts, you know. And when kids would come to their house, and a lot of the kids knew what was coming, so they wouldn't come. But they'd hand out these chick tracts. And one day the lady came to me and she said, Pastor Dan, these kids just don't come anymore. They don't like what I'm doing. And I don't know what to do. What should I do? And I said, well, you need to pray about it. You need to pray about it. And so the next Halloween, she and this other lady came together and they dressed up as Martha and Mary. And they had these tracts that they had made on their own, made them out of construction paper, and they put a sucker in there or something. I think it was a sucker. And they gave out these things that said, Jesus will make your life sweeter. And these are two ladies in their 70s out there in the front, and they each one took on, one was Mary, one was Martha. When the kids would walk up, they'd say, hey, I'm Martha, and this is Mary, and we want to tell you what we saw. And they would act out. They would act out when Lazarus was raised from the dead. And and you know what? Every year after, they would do a little skit outside there, and you'd have 30 kids out there waiting to get candy because they're telling a Bible story. These were two older ladies who had never taught anything in class in a church. In other words, they said, okay, God, what can we do? And they went on to redeem the time. And you know what? I believe God honored that. I saw kids show up in a church service settings because those two ladies acted out Mary and Martha. I got to see, it was really cool. And you know what? They did it because they wanted people to know. They wanted people to know that Jesus was real. And so that happened, and they did something for the Lord. And some of you may say, well, that was horrible. You know what? They made a difference. And there were families that came to church because it wasn't just those kids hearing these Bible stories told out by these two ladies dressed as Mary and Martha. The parents heard. They had a chance. So I'm going to do everything I can to redeem this day for the Lord. I'm going to do everything I can to help people redeem their lives and redeem that time. So the whole point of this today is Colossians chapter 3. If you've been raised up with Christ, keep seeking the things above, where Christ is seated at the right hand of the Father. And set your mind on the things above, not on the things that are on the earth. We're never going to change the culture around to stop celebrating Halloween. So what can we do to change the people? What can we do to influence them? So, let the Lord use you. Speak to somebody. But don't shut yourself in and never talk to anybody out there all just because it's October 31st. Make a difference where you are. Make a difference how you can. My parents didn't think about it. My parents weren't Christians when I was a kid. So I grew up, I did grow up trick-or-treating. We knew where the best places were too, but nonetheless, we're responsible for what we do now. You're responsible for what you see now. You're responsible for what you say now. So do something that glorifies the Lord. Do something that glorifies the Lord. And on October 31st, be thankful for what God did through Martin Luther. Be thankful for the opportunities your church may have to make a difference. And if you're doing a trunk or treat, hey, God bless what you're trying to do to make a difference for those kids. Thank you for trying to make a difference and share the gospel and share the love of Jesus. We're going to be praying and listen to the word and at the altars on Sunday night at the 12 service, focusing on Pentecost. So, you got to pray, folks. It's about doing what He wants you to do. Hey, next week I'm going to be talking about how your family, as Christians and believers, should deal with and address when people in your family come out with alternative lifestyles. I've had a lot of people asked me about this. I actually got an email today, and I put it on the calendar months ago for next week. But if you've got family members that are coming out or doing alternative lifestyles, or they're changing their gender and things like that, or now they're X or EYO or the number 12, I mean, people are starting, gender identity thing is getting out of hand. But here's the thing. You still have to love them and be Christ to them. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that next week. And we're going to make a difference. We're going to help you to make a difference in the lives of those in your family that struggle with same-sex attraction and are living on those lifestyles. We're thinking about it. Folks, we are living in the church world today that cannot, we cannot isolate ourselves with our message from the world that's lost. And tomorrow, the dream I'm going to share, called the Desert Road Dream, I'll be sharing it at noon. And this, I'm going to be doing something very different. I'm going to be preaching this dream because that's the feeling that I have. I got to preach this. And especially if you're a Pentecostal, you are named in this dream. God was speaking not just to me, but to any Pentecostal out there. And we've got to respond. So we'll see it in the morning at 7 for Pray With Me. And then also at noon, I'll be sharing the dream. And I'm going to trust God is going to use it to make a difference in your life and draw you closer to him. So, hey, thanks a lot, folks. You have a great rest of the day.